Good morning. This is going to be a fun little fly to tie, very simple. I was looking for a smaller profile fly to use for red fishing, and so I wanted to also incorporate some natural fur to it. So I've tried a number of different furs. This is one of the first ones I tried. This has some silver fox for a tail, and I liked it okay, but I wanted to experiment with some other furs. So I tried some Arctic fox, mainly because I've got quite a bit of Arctic fox, and it came out to be pretty white, which is okay in some instances, but I wanted to be more muted, so I kind of got away from the Arctic fox and tried badger. This is one with some badger. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's got some cool black tips and then some white guard hairs that extend out further with the badger. And then I tried what has become my favorite material for this fly, and that is possum, regular old possum. Now, if you go to buy this stuff, you'll see a lot of Australian possum. That's not what you want for this. The Australian possum is a whole different critter, the Australian bushy-tailed possum. And it's good for a lot of different fly tying applications, but not for this one because the fibers are way too short. So this is just good old garden variety possum. And this really, the use of the possum on here caused me to think about the name for this simple little fly, and we're going to call it roadkill. And so to tie the roadkill is very simple. It's got the possum for the tail. It's got a little bit of flash in there, some crystal flash, and some rubber legs, and then a brush to finish out the front end of the fly. And then it's got up front the bead chain eyes. You can use, and I've used some regular dumbbell eyes, either brass or lead. It's a matter of how fast you want this thing to sink. And I think that in this case, I wanted some flies that will sink a little bit slower, and will land a little softer. So if you're in some really skinny water and need a good fly for redfish, this might be it with the bead chain eyes. Also, I mentioned this is tied for redfish. I think it will also work on other species as well. This fly really imitates a crab or a shrimp, and it's also going to imitate a crawdad, so it might be a great largemouth bass fly. I don't know, we haven't fished this yet, but I'm certainly going to try it for largemouth bass. My guess is you'll get some other species, catfish as well, and anything else that'll eat a crawdad should eat this fly. Now, I've tied this on a little smaller hook than I usually use for the redfish flies. This is tied with a Gamakatsu SL12S. It's a saltwater hook in a size 1/0. You can also use a Gamakatsu B10S stinger, but if you do that, you'll be a different size. This is a size 1, which is pretty much about the same size as the 1/0 in that saltwater hook. So I've got a saltwater hook in the vise, and I'm going to start with the bead chain eyes. Begin the thread up here about an eye length back from the eye of the hook. Make a small thread bump, come back just a little bit, make another bump. This forms my cradle for the bead chain eyes. Keep them positioned. Snip off our tag. Now for the bead chain eyes. I'm using some really large bead chain eyes the best you can find at Ace Hardware. Take my snips and cut off a pair of them. And make a couple of cross wraps, and a couple of cross wraps the other way. Kind of position my eyes in there. Check to make sure they're on straight. Then do a number of cross wraps in each direction. Again, making sure that at the end those eyes are on perpendicular to the hook shank. 5 or 6 cross wraps on each way. Once I get a number of those in, I can come in and go over the bead chain, or under the bead chain, over the hook, under the bead chain, over the hook. And what this does, it tightens up those wraps so it holds the bead chain eyes in place. Same with dumbbell eyes. Okay, and for extra insurance, we're going to add just a drop of super glue or Zap-A-Gap on each side of that. This is really a very quick, easy tie and a good way to fill up your box with redfish flies. And run the thread back to where the bend of the hook starts. And this hook, it's just about at the a little bit beyond the point of the hook into the bend. Okay, now for the possum, and actually I do have some regular possum fur on order, but what I'm cutting this possum fur off of is a possum fur bowstring silencer that I had, and with nice long fibers, and these things are a good 2 inches long. I thought this is a good use for that since I wasn't using this on a bowstring. So we'll grab a clump of that, about that much, and cut it off close to the hide. Again, you can buy this stuff at pretty much any fly shop. Or you can, I see these things all the time along the roadside. They're just laying there for the harvesting. So if you want to pick up your own possum fur, you can do that, and it's very, very cheap. Nobody else wants that stuff laying along the side of the road. There's a little bit of under fur on these things, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to cut off the end flush. Pretty much a straight cut across the fur, and then lash that down with a couple loose wraps, tighten it up. This doesn't give you as long a tail as most redfish flies, but I think it's going to work just fine. Especially if you're dealing with, again, real skinny water and you don't want to stir up too much. Have a soft landing fly and a little smaller fly for those picky redfish. The thing I like about the possum too is it's got a lot of white in the part of the fur that's closer to the hide, and then it's got kind of black tips out here in these guard hairs. So it provides a little bit of natural coloration. Now we'll take some crystal flash, and we want about, this is kind of the last of my crystal flash bundle, so it's getting kind of ragged. And I want 4 to 6 strands of this stuff. I've got a mess here. About ready to pitch all that in the trash and start over. Okay, hook that around our thread. Tie it down on one side, take half of that bundle of crystal flash to the other side and lash it down. So I have the same number of strands on both sides of the fly. And we'll pull all that up above and trim it off so it's about not quite as long as the tail. Okay, bring our thread back up to ahead of our tie-in point for the tail, and next step is the rubber legs. And I'm using some Hairline Crab Crusher legs. They're two-tone, gives you a nice contrast if you're tying flies that are to imitate a crab or a shrimp. So we want 2 of those strands. In this case, it's blue and a shrimp-like color. And fold that in half, lining up where the blue stops on those 4 strands. Okay. And then I'm going to tie this in right on top of the hook, all bundled together. Okay, now we'll take 2 of those strands on one side of the hook and 2 on the other and lash those down so they run along the side of the hook. Now pull all of them up, but don't stretch them out. Just pull them up with no tension and trim them off about the same length as your crystal flash. There's your legs. We can get rid of this tag. There we go. We'll clean that up just a little bit. The thread I'm using is a 140 ultra thread denier, and I'm using it in an orange because I want to end up with a little orange head on the fly, just to add some contrast. Okay, now for the body of the fly, we're going to use some 1.5 inch foxy brush. And in this case, I'm using an olive brown. Use whatever color suits you, but I decided olive brown was the best to give us kind of a natural coloration for this crab imitation fly. Lash that down. Again, it's in a 1.5 inch. Okay, as we wrap, we want to stroke these fibers rearward. In spiral, they brush forward with kind of loose wraps, not touching wraps. One wrap in behind the eyes, then over the top of the eyes, and 2 wraps in front of the eyes. I think we're gonna do one more because I'm in the mood to do that. There we go. Now we'll tie that off in front of the eyes. Grab our wire cutting scissors and trim that wire off. I'll leave enough of it exposed that I can, with my thumbnail, bend that wire rearward so we don't have the point of the wire sticking up to cut the thread. Then stroke those fibers rearward as best you can and build up a small head. Sometimes I add a weed guard on these things, sometimes I don't. For demonstration purposes, I think we'll do that. We'll add a weed guard. So whenever I use a weed guard, I want to take my pliers and mash down the end of the monofilament. I'm using actually some 50-pound fluorocarbon for a weed guard. And we'll mash that down with the pliers and give it a little bit of a bend, make it easier to tie in. Invert our fly. And lash down our fluorocarbon. What I do too is take one wrap of the fluorocarbon in behind, or of the thread, maybe two wraps in behind the fluorocarbon. That helps prop it up a little bit. Okay, and we can trim that off just a pinch longer than the hook point. This way, if we're fishing a little bit of moss or weeds in the bottom of the ocean, then that weed guard will help keep us from getting hung up. Now we can whip finish. And let's see, we'll do a little trimming up here. I've got some wild fibers in front of around the hook eye. I'm gonna get rid of those. And then we'll apply a little bit of head cement. Take our bodkin and pick out some of those trapped fibers on our EP brush. Okay, then take a brush and brush for a comb and brush all those fibers rearward. Now the last step to make this thing look a little better will be to give it just a little bit of a haircut. So we give it kind of a sleeker profile up around the head. So we're going to trim off just a little bit of material from that brush around the head. Being careful not to cut your weed guard off. It gives you a little sleeker appearance to the head of the fly. So there you have our new fly called the roadkill. Give that a try on redfish and other species as well. I think it's going to be a good fly to have in your box.